Hello, welcome. My name is Eva Lauren Jean Charles. I'm the founder of Black on Black Education. Thank you guys so much for being here. We're waiting for the rest of the panel and the woman of honor to get on, but we're probably gonna start in the next 4 or 5 minutes just to give everybody a chance to hop on. Hello, welcome. We're giving everybody a chance to hop on. So we're gonna start in probably 4 minutes. Thank you guys so much for being here. A few more minutes till we get started. She's here. Hello, Ariel.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
Well, we're giving folks the opportunity to hop on. We'll probably start between 7:03, 7:05, just to give everybody the opportunity to get the Zoom link, hop on. Welcome.
So how are you today?
I'm doing good. It's been a long day, but I'm excited about
I feel that.
I got my book. We're gonna talk about it. I'm so excited.
I got mine as well. Had to get it off the shelf.
Yes, it was. I when I came down to start the meeting, I was like, oh no, how could I forget the book? I had to go get it off my bookcase. Welcome everybody. As people start to come in, we are getting ready to get started. The panel will be starting in the next couple of minutes, just giving everybody a chance to hop on. I'm super excited and I look forward to a really fantastic conversation. Welcome. So we're gonna give it 2 more minutes and then we're gonna get started. The way the panel is gonna work is I'm moderating, so I'm just here to ask some questions. We're gonna talk about diversity and inclusion in learning materials and why it's so important. We're gonna talk about, obviously, the modern Black alphabet and this incredible piece of art. And I am looking forward to everybody really enjoying. And if you have not purchased the book, please purchase the book. It is so incredible and so important. Welcome. Thank you everybody for being here. We are going to get started in the next minute or so. Welcome. Hello. Thank you everybody for being here. We are going to get started again, like I said, in the next minute. We're going to do introductions of the panel. And at some point, you guys will all get the information that you need about where and how you can purchase the modern Black alphabet. Beautifully done. I can't wait to talk about it. All right, it is just about that time. It is just about that time to get started. Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure everything was all set. We're gonna start off by the woman of the hour is going to get the opportunity to introduce herself and introduce you guys all to her book. Take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Arial Robinson. I am the author of the Modern Day Black Alphabet. It started as just a photo series. I came across the original Black ABCs that were created in 1970 by the Society of Visual Education. I thought it was a great idea and I recreated it. So it started as just a photo series and people liked it so much that I turned it into a book, and the rest is history.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you reached out to me to talk about your book, and the minute that I saw the photos of it, I was like, okay, ordering now. It's just so incredible. It's so beautifully done. Like, I will give folks like a tiny, tiny preview because you need to buy the book. But like, just gorgeous. Like, the pictures are done so incredibly. The word choice is so incredible. And honestly, I think what really struck me is the fact that it was just so authentically Black. And too often, Black students are not given the opportunity to see themselves reflected in the learning materials that they are required to use. And so we'll talk a whole lot more about that in this hour. But thank you so much for creating the book. And then again, thank you so much for being here. So let's get our panel introduced. Ariel, you know the panelists a lot better than I do. So if you want to do introductions, let them come on and tell everybody who they are.
So first, Nandi, you can introduce yourself. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys inviting me. My name is Nandi Dale. I am a junior elementary education student at A&T, and I'm also the chapter president of the Student North Carolina Association of Educators.
Nice. That's really, really good. And then Ari, you can introduce yourself.
We can't hear you. I think you're still muted.
Sorry, I definitely was muted. My name's Ari Ford. I'm a junior marketing student who also attends A&T. I'm part of AMA, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, the NAACP. So that's just a little bit about me. Just started a business promo organization. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yes, Ari is one of the people who purchased the book.
Absolutely. So we are going to go through a series of questions, just kind of having a conversation about diversity and equity and inclusion in learning materials. So I think, like I said before, unfortunately, Black students, young and old, rarely get to see themselves reflected in the stories or the materials that are used in the classroom. And so, and then inside and outside of the classroom. So Black parents don't have a lot of options in terms of materials to help teach their students that show their students' experience within them. And so I wanted to start off with you, Ariel, by asking you, I know you talked a little bit about what inspired you to write the book, but what inspired you? What response have you gotten since you wrote the book? What has come up for you, and like how important do you think it is that a book like this is created and now in circulation?
So I am a multimedia journalism student, so I won't see myself teaching in a classroom, and never did I think I would be an author of a book. But since I've published a book, I've been able to connect with so many different people who are passionate about not only education, but making sure that Black students have access to education that, is a catapult to their success. So I would say that since I have been able to do this, I've been able just to meet so many people, and it's opened my eyes to, some of the things that I may lack in my education career. So I just think it's been a really good opportunity to connect with other people, and then also just to give back and see where we lack, because sometimes when you're in a system, you don't really see its flaws because it's all you know. And so being able to step back and see, okay, well, there's a lack of this and there's a lack of that, and being able to provide in those places is something is very inspiring, and I'm glad that I've been able to see it.
That's incredible. I love that. I love the idea that, like, I think that's so much of what needs to happen in this particular political moment, but then moving forward is that folks have to figure out where in the movement that they are, where they can support the advancement of Black education. And again, this is how Ariel decided to do it. And I think it was an incredible way to do so. Anyone who I've shared it with, anyone who I've showed this book has like sent me the receipt and been like, I purchased it. So I love that is the response that folks get once they get the book. Like, my sister's having a baby in a few weeks. I already ordered my second one so that she can have a copy. Like, it's just so, it's so beautiful to see stuff that's so authentic to me and to my like coming of age story reflected in such a beautiful book. So I want to ask everybody that's on the panel to answer this question. What is it that you love most about the modern day Black alphabet? Ariel, you can start.
Okay. What do I love the most about it? It's my experience. I think that's what I love the most is when I see the book, I see myself. So I'm able to just obviously relate to it because they are my photos. And I love that it's a physical thing. I can hold it, I can feel it. And I'm obviously, people aren't supposed to be materialistic, but when you have something that's in your hand, it means something to you. And I think I just really enjoy that. There's a piece of me in this time that I'll have forever. I'll be able to touch it and see it and feel it, you know? So that's my favorite thing about it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I want to pronounce your name properly, so please correct me if I mess up, but Nandi?
Yes, that's correct. It's Nandi.
Perfect.
One thing I love so much about initially even the series and then the fact that she created a book is that it's so real. It's like 100% something that everyone can relate to. Someone's child, a Black child specifically, will relate to each page of that book. And that's very unique. And as a future educator, there's a lack of that. So to be able to say, I can purchase this and have it in my classroom because some little Black boy, little Black girl is going to see themselves in it is just phenomenal.
No, I feel exactly the same way. And I'm going to start teaching in the classroom very soon. And I am going to be teaching young students. No, I'm not. Why did I say that? I'm going to be teaching older students, but I still find it so relevant and so like something that I'm going to use in my classroom. So Arian, please, what do you love most about the book?
I think what I love most about the book is like watching Ari create the series because like this is my best friend, so we talk pretty much every other day. So like I'm calling her and she's like working on it. And then when she told me that she was turning it into a book, I was just like, this is so great. And she kind of doubted herself at first. She was just like, well, I don't know if people will really buy the book like they say they want it. I'm like, Ari, just push it out. Like this is something great. Like this is gonna blow up, and it did. So I think like knowing that my best friend created this and like watching her actually create it and knowing and seeing the space that she creates all of her work in is just amazing to me because she does so much with so little.
I love that. And I think that that's the tradition of Blackness. We make something out of nothing. Like, you know what I mean? Like we've always done that. That's tradition of being a Black person. And I was about to say in America, but that's the tradition of being a Black person everywhere. We make something out of nothing. So I love that. We're gonna stick on you, Arian, and I'm gonna ask you like, what drove you to purchase the book outside of the fact that that Ariel is your best friend?
So my cousin, he just had a baby, and his child is about to turn 2. So I was like, this would be great for him. He's really starting to talk and like form sentences and stuff like that. So I was like, this would be great for him. And my aunt, she just had a child as well, and her child is, I want to say like 8 months. So like he's almost at that age. So I just felt like even for my kids, I really got it, like you said, just to support Ari because it's my best friend, and a coffee table book, like for my kids when they get older, like it's just an amazing piece of artwork as well, outside of the fact that it's an education material. I think that it's just an amazing piece of art regardless. So
Absolutely, thank you. And so we're gonna go back to you, Nandi, and we're gonna talk a little bit about as someone who's going into education, as somebody who wants to be a part of the framing and shaping of young Black students. What drove you to buy this book? And then how are you going to use it in the classroom? How are you going to use it to support students? And like, what is the language around how you're going to talk about this book so that they understand why it's so impactful and why it's so beautiful to have something like this that is available to them now?
So I'm currently building my library for my classroom now, just because, as you guys know, books are expensive. So I will definitely be purchasing this book before the end of the summer, just because I want to already have titles in my home that are for my Black students. The impact is going to be huge. I currently work with a program called the Freedom School Partners, and they actually purchase books by Black authors with Black students. And just the impact of a student seeing someone that even has like the same haircut, that might be from the same neighborhood, that eats the same type of food as them is crazy, because it's just sometimes it blows their mind to see someone that looks like them in educational materials. So I will definitely be making the purchase of this book for my future classroom.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so, yes, woohoo for Freedom Schools. I was just about to ask a follow-up question about Freedom School, what that looks like, and again, why this book connects to that tradition of like creating freedom, creating liberated spaces, creating spaces where students feel seen and heard and loved in the classroom.
So this summer, Freedom School actually looks very different in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, we are still providing students with the materials, and we actually follow the integrated reading curriculum. And it's a curriculum that just helps bridge that gap that a lot of our students that are in of a lower socioeconomic status, help them retain the information that they learned during the school year. So Freedom School, it's definitely, it's a movement, if I had to be very honest. It's something enrichment. It's for college students to get a chance to connect with these children, and you build an impact, because in a sense, being a college student is a privilege that some of these kids haven't even thought of yet. So the fact that you're helping them read, you're supporting them emotionally, and then on top of that, you look just like them, it's just like a huge impact that you can't even imagine on a student.
Absolutely. So bringing it back to you, Ariel, let's talk for a little bit about your inspiration by some of the specific parts in the book. So let me take a second to look at kind of one of the pages that really stuck out to me. This one, I think this is the one that I showed before. This one I love. And so can you just, here we go, for everyone to be able to see it. The books, I am absolutely obsessed. So can you just explain a little bit about that one? And then there's one more that I'm gonna pop out of like what the inspiration was behind that.
Yeah, most definitely. So when I was doing each letter, I wrote down different words. And so I was pretty easy for me just because I do go to an HBCU, and anybody who goes to an HBCU, they always put illustrious or, the blah, blah university. So for me, being an HBCU student and loving my HBCU, it was important that I somehow integrated that into the book. And I thought illustrious would be perfect. So I was like, okay, how am I gonna do this? So I just thought about different things that when you see them, you automatically think of your school or university. And so like a varsity jacket usually has like people's like credentials. So I thought, okay, how I can incorporate different HBCUs and not just my own. And then like a library, because it's school and you think about that. And then the other photo, it's the picture of someone's Aggie 1 card. It was found in one of the yearbooks at the school. Somebody was in the library studying, they were going through the yearbooks and they found this Aggie 1 card. And I think that's important because not only do you use your card to identify you on campus, but that's just like a piece, and it's showing like I was a part of history, I went to an HBCU, and like it makes it like, what we've been saying a lot tonight, it makes it real. When you have this card, it has your face, it has your name on it. So I thought that was really important to have in the book, and to just talk about, going to HBCU and higher education is, it's not always an option for some people, but if it is an option, it's nice to go to a place where people are educated and they look like you and you have a family and you can succeed comfortably, So I thought it was important that I talk about, going to HBCU, because it's my experience, but also experience for millions of Black families across the nation. If their grandparents or their great-grandparents went to HBCU and created this lane of education that was never thought of before.
I love that. And so that just makes me think of a follow-up question of like creating community. And I think I'm going to spread this across the entire panel about like, that's a little bit farther out of like just this book. Of course, creating community in the classroom and outside of the classroom is so important. But I just want you to talk a little bit about like how you've cultivated and created community as someone who attends an HBCU. I did not have that experience. So and I'm sure a lot of other folks on this call have not had that experience. So kind of talking to them about like the safety and the comfort and the community that comes from that, and then how we recreate that in predominantly white spaces or spaces that are predominantly non-Black. And then that's just going to go down the line.
So for me, I don't want to say that I really created a community within my HBCU, but I definitely was able to join one. You know, despite what a lot of people think, HBCUs are very diverse and there's so many different types of Black people who are there. So it was nice being able to go there. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer for some people, but I was able to find people who are also creatives and that look like me and dress like me. And I'm able to connect with them. And from that, I'm able to create more work where I can create a virtual space where people will want to come talk to me and create with me and ask me questions and virtually take it back to, you know, their physical communities. So I would say that my HBCU has just pushed me to be more in depth and more in tune with my craft so that I can put that, you know, bring it to Instagram and bring it to Twitter, and that people who see me are inspired and they take it back to their own communities. So for me, Instagram has really been that bridge with bringing my HBCU community with my virtual communities.
I love that. I love that. Nandi?
I would say my HBCU community, I think something that's so unique about it is that literally, like Ariel said, there's a space for everyone, and it's whether or not you go out and find it. But the other thing that I love about going to a HBCU, and I can say that's something that can possibly be recreated at other institutions and spaces, is just the aspect that someone would nurture you. And I think that's what really, just makes going to a HBCU, the best choice possible, because you have adults, you have older students, you even have students your same age who may be accomplishing more than you. And instead of, looking down on you or, putting you up, it's kind of like there's a sense of nurturement, and they will nurture you up to the person that you're supposed to be. I really believe that HBCUs build you up into the person that you're going to be, and they make sure that everything about you is good. Like, they just make sure that you're prepared to go into this world. So that's something, just mentorship, really.
I love that. And so just kind of to follow up with you on that is, again, as someone who's going to be an educator, someone who's going to be a traditional educator in the schooling space, how do you feel rallying people around, like, what would the conversation look like for other members of your school staff who may be non-Black people, who don't understand the importance of creating that close-knit community? What can you say or do, and how can you implement materials like this, and obviously a wider array of reading and writing materials, express that to them so that they understand why it's so important?
The first thing I would say to non-Black educators is just be real with yourself first. Understand, why did you choose to be in this school? How do you truly view this community? And then once you're real with yourself and you've already, assessed all of your own biases, then you need to approach your students the same way you approach another kind of student. I think a lot of time in education, we try to say it's not political, but education is very political. And I think it's important for non-white educators to take a look at themselves in the mirror and see who they really are, how they really feel about the students that they are serving. And once they do that, it's a lot easier, because then you don't see your students as a help case, somebody you have to save. You see them as other human beings. And when you do that, then the connection just clicks. And I think that's just important. You just have to be real with yourself and really look at everything, and not just look at the kids and try to, dissect them. You have to dissect yourself first as an educator, and then approach your children. And that way it's real on both sides.
Love that. I love that. Arian?
So I used to be a creative. I consider myself a creative. I used to do photography, and it was a creative at A&T that actually kind of inspired me to buy my first camera. And once I pushed out that I was doing photography, not only the support that I got from all of my friends that attended the HBCU that I go to, well, A&T, but another photographer, he was in one of my classes, and he took me under his wing and was like, hey, I want to show you how to do this, this, and this. I didn't even ask him to do that for me, and he did it for me. So like Maddie said, having that support system and that mentorship from people that happens so naturally. And even another one of my friends, he's a photographer too, and he helped me and showed me some things with my camera as well. So like Nandi said, I would have to agree, it's the mentorship for me. And it's Nandi said as well, sorry to keep saying name Nandi, but like the community, and you can fit in anywhere. Like there's just so many places for you to fit in. Like I said, all the organizations I'm a part of, there's so many different people. So in an HBCU, there's always somewhere you can fit in. And I would say how to recreate these spaces at PWIs. I would just say find unity within the Black community and just try to find where you can fit in within the Black community, because I know they have like Black student union groups and stuff like that. So really just trying to expand those organizations that you guys have for Black students on your campus, and then like really finding where you fit in there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Muted myself. So I just want to get back to Ariel to kind of talk about this one. Like when I got here, I was like, she's doing it for me, like really doing it for me. And so love this picture. And so my question, or kind of my discussion guiding question to like where we're going to go next, is I love that you put the awards and things that you've been recognized for in there, because I think that way too often, as people of color, as Black people specifically, we are taught to be humble, not to brag, not to put out there all the hard work that we do. And so I just want you to talk a little bit about that. I want you to talk a little bit about what possessed you to kind of put the X's for Excellence in there, and then to show up, one, with the Black Panther side, but then also with the side that is recognizing you as an intellectual, as an incredible artist, as just a person who deserves to be awarded.
Yeah, most definitely. For me, that was like one that I didn't take much to figure out what I wanted to do with it, just because like I feel like sometimes when people think of excellence, they think of one thing, and they always think of like it's what the right thing to do is, but sometimes the right thing isn't considered the right thing. So a lot of people, like for me, I believe, what the Black Panthers were doing and are still doing for us is amazing, and some other people may think it's too radical and they don't agree with it, but that doesn't make it any less excellent. Just like if I'm doing well in school and I'm getting A's, that's another type of excellence. So I think it was important that I highlight both parts. And then also just in 2020, I've just learned that, it's okay to be proud of yourself and to talk about it, because I know a lot of times like people are like, oh, this person's doing too much, but it's like, it's important that we highlight our victories, because for me, I have been able to achieve so much success because I highlight even my small victories. There's an end goal that I want to get to. I'm not there yet, but I don't lose momentum, because when something small happens to me, I acknowledge it, but I don't dwell on it, So that was just important for me to say, like, you did the thing. It's okay. Like, it's okay to be proud of yourself, because that helps you keep momentum. It helps you keep consistency, but also knowing that excellence doesn't come in one kind of form, because so what's excellent to me might not be excellent to somebody else. But it's important that we highlight both sides of people who are doing things that aren't traditionally considered like right, but most of the time, those things that aren't considered traditionally right, you go down years from now, and then people look back and be like, wow, they were really ahead of their time, So I think it was just important to see the two sides and show that excellence isn't a one-way street.
I love that. Excellence isn't a one-way street. Quote it. So Nandi, I want you as an educator to kind of speak to that, speak to what that can look like in the classroom, speak to how that can support students. And so just kind of help folks in here who are educators, folks who are parents, things like that, to kind of frame how we define, how we look at excellence, and then how as educators we can make sure that our students know that the way that they show up is excellent, regardless of how dominant society defines it.
So just to really reiterate what Ariel said about celebrating small wins, I think that's just as important in the classroom. You're gonna have your brightest students who are academically, inclined, and they're gonna do, ace their tests, but you're also gonna have students who are talented in other areas. And I think it's important as an educator to celebrate everyone. And it's not even in a way that where it's like everybody gets the effort trophy, but just like celebrate the uniqueness of each student. So for example, like a student who might not be a good writer, a great writer, but they're great at describing what they wrote in a picture. So instead of saying, well, you didn't write well, you can always say, well, I love the way you just, I can see exactly what you're saying from your picture. You praise the things that they're talented at, and then you, in return, you're nurturing that about them, and they build confidence in the area that they're comfortable in. I think it's so wrong when teachers compare other students as well. So just because this student is, you know, exactly where you want them to be, they're doing exactly everything you're telling them to do, doesn't mean they're no less than a student who sometimes doesn't listen or sometimes doesn't follow directions, because just like we have those days, kids have those days too. So I think it's important when you celebrate their small wins that in return, they're like, oh, you mean Miss Dell appreciates me? Okay, well, Miss Dell, see, like, you know what I'm trying to say? You're just fostering, like you're nurturing the kid all the way around. So you just have to find the good in something and not dwell on what the bad thing that they did.
That. I love that so much. And so we are going to, I have two more questions that are for the entire panel, and then we're going to open it up to a Q&A. So anyone who's on here who has a question, wants to ask about the book, wants to know where to purchase the book, wants to talk a little bit more about diversity, equity, inclusion, how we can show up as educators to support students specifically by choosing educational materials that reflect the student population, but then also give diversity to students who are non-Black. Because I think sometimes we forget that too. Like, oh, I'm predominantly white school, so I don't have to have diverse learning materials. That's just untrue. We have to show people various narratives. And so what I want to ask to all of you is, what's something that you learned about yourself through either reading the book, looking at the book, or Ariel, for you creating the book? So Ariel, you can go first.
I learned that I just learned more about my experiences, because I know like there are a lot of things that I see on social media and I'm like, oh snap, like I went through that too. And so for me, it was just about like revisiting those experiences and like telling them in a story, because sometimes it's hard to tell people like about the night before you was getting ready for Easter Sunday and they're like, what? Why were you guys doing that? And so being able to take that from just a story I tell with my words to like creating it into a photo that ultimately people, when they look at this photo, they're not going to hear me telling the story, and I still want them to get what I'm saying and then take it back. So for me, those experiences that just seem really normal because I had always done them and no one ever acknowledged them, it just made them more real for me. And so I think that's something that I learned, is that everything that I'm going through, I'm not alone in it. And it's real, it's valid. And however I feel, whether it's good or bad, it's a valid feeling, emotion.
I love that. Nandi, do you want to go next?
Something that I learned from the Black alphabet is definitely that our culture is real. That is not something that, you know, someone just made up. That is something that we all share, and that Black culture is very much real. Like literally exactly what Ariel said. It shows you that what you experience, you're not alone in it, that there's millions and millions of people who experience the same thing, because our culture is real. Like Black culture isn't a myth, it's a very real thing. And I just love the way she did it.
Absolutely. And Arian?
Okay.
Yep.
All right, I would say that like, not just piggybacking off what Nandi and Ariel both said, I would just say like that the Black experience is authentic, and like Nandi said, our culture is real. I remember I had just little background. I had a ninth grade history teacher who told us that he thought that Black people didn't have any culture, and I was just kind of like, I don't know about that. Like, he was making some arguments, but I was just like, nah, not really feeling it. And when Ari pushed her book out, it made me realize that like, as Black people, we, like Nani said, we all share the same authentic experience. So
yes, thank you. And so like my last question for you guys before we kind of break for Q&A is like, I really want you to take a second to think about if you had the opportunity to redo your education experience, or you had the opportunity to talk directly to teachers that you've had in the past or teachers that your children will have in the future, what would you tell them about the importance of diversity and inclusion in the materials that they use in their classrooms, and the way in which they choose to engage with your children? Ariel, kick us off.
I think that I would tell, any of my educators or my children's educators, when I do have children, I would just tell them that, listening doesn't invalidate your degree. It's okay to listen to your students. Just because you're teaching them doesn't mean that you know everything, because you don't always know everything, and it's okay to be learning every day with your students. And I feel like you're able to foster your students more when you are learning with them and you're learning about their experiences. Because if I were to be an educator, I'm not going to be an educator to all little Black girls. And even if I was, all little Black girls aren't the same, and there's diversity within that. And so I think it's important that if educators want their students to go as far as they want them to do, then you need to be able to listen as well as teach, and use those things and find a happy medium within them.
I love that. That's another thing that I have to steal now. Listening does not invalidate your degree. I love it. Nandi?
I have like one phrase: culturally relevant pedagogy, period. If you're an educator, that's something that you need to be practicing. I don't care if you start teaching in the 70s, in the 80s, or the 90s, you need to be literate and well-versed in culturally relevant pedagogy, because in culturally relevant pedagogy and even multicultural education, because it's just like the amount of students, the type of students that we have coming into our schools today, there's not just Black and white. And you have to be able to serve and teach and educate all of those students. So you need to be teaching a pedagogy that caters to them, not to you, not to state standards. I mean, to state standards, but not to that textbook and whatever exactly that textbook says. You need to remold and shape all of that towards your students, because just like we all said, we are related to this book, so your students need to relate to you. So culturally relevant pedagogy, period.
I love that. I love that. And for the people in the back who are like, what is that? You just give a small 2-sentence tidbit of like what it is. And of course they can Google it, but just for now.
Culturally relevant pedagogy is in layman's terms, basically what Ariel said, is listening to your students, and then in response, creating educational materials that cater directly to them and that reflect their experiences, so that when they see education, they see themselves in it.
Absolutely. Perfect. Arian, what would you tell your teachers and your educators and your children's future teachers and educators about what they need to know?
So I definitely agree with Ari and Nandi, but the first thing that came to my mind was like, I know when I was in school, I had a lot of trouble with my white female teachers, and I don't want to call any of them out, but it was just like, if I said something that they didn't like or I disagree with them, they think that like, oh, you have an attitude, I'm sending you out, all this. And I'm just like, no, I'm simply voicing my opinion because you're wrong. So it just goes back to like listening to your students. And anybody who knows me knows that like, if I don't like something, I'm going to speak on it. So that's just how I've always been. And it didn't really sit well with a lot of my teachers, because when they're wrong, they don't like to be told that. And another thing I would say, especially for like history teachers, is just like, even if it's not in the curriculum, that doesn't mean that you don't have to teach it. So if you have a majority African-American class, or even if you don't, teach us Black history, and not just in Black History Month. So that's really it, all I have to say.
I love it. And so with that, we've made it through 40 minutes of chatting and talking and discussing with my questions, but I want to stop talking for a little bit. So if anybody wants to come off of mute, if anybody wants to put it in the chat, what are some questions that you have for Ariel or any of the other panelists in this discussion about diversity and the need for culturally relevant pedagogy in classrooms as it pertains to the materials that teachers are using for students? We got some, yes. MLK isn't the only Black person in Black history. That's a fact. That's a fact. All right, we have got a question. So I am a Black pre-K / early childhood educator. What is one or two policy demands you believe should be in place to ensure diversity and inclusion in schools? So we'll do the same thing that we've been doing, kind of go down the row. Ariel, what do you think?
Let me read this again. So policies or demands. So I would just say, like, if I were a parent and, I have my Black children, coming, I think it just should be important that, like they said, like making sure that Black history is, prevalent, and that there's like an actual curriculum. Because I know for me, my first African American studies class wasn't until college. And so I don't think that we should have to go all the way to college to start learning about, things past Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King. So I think it's important that, like, not just for the individual educator, but for the state, that it shouldn't be important that we not only learn about white history, but, Black history, Hispanic history, because these cultures are very important to what America is. So I would say just incorporating Black history, and then also just incorporating, things that are around. So if you know that your school is in an inner city, and, there's just reading the room, honestly, you see what is in the room, and making sure that it's your ethical responsibility to not ignore your students and just pass them along. So I would just say, really stepping back, dissecting, and making it a priority to include them. I would want my children's educators to do that.
Absolutely. I think something that I say very often when I'm talking to people about inclusion specifically, we are not trying to make classrooms that try to mold and fit and make students includable. We want to make classrooms that are inclusive, that make everyone feel comfortable when they step into them. And so you don't want to mold a student and make them change in order to have them fit the box that you're putting them in. That is not inclusion. And so I think that that's what we are seeing in terms of inclusion in school, and I want that to change. But Nandi, please share some more.
I think the focus of school districts, states, school boards should be equity. There's a lot of talk about things being equal. Yes, things are equal, but things aren't equitable. And I think the focus needs to be shifted to that so that everything is equitable. Therefore, let's say there's a fence, somebody's 6'1", somebody's 5'5", that person gets a box to be able to compete at the same level. Now, something equal is they both get a box, but that 6'1" person is still going to be ahead of the 5'5" person. That's just like an analogy. So I would definitely say there needs to be a focus on things being equitable for all of our students.
Again with this mute button. Arian, do you have anything to add?
I would say that I was rereading the question again, but as far as do you believe should be put in place to ensure diversity and inclusion in schools, like you said, you have to make the classroom. What did you say? You said something about about inclusion, like making everybody in the classroom feel included, but also comes with like how they section off the neighborhoods and like the school districts. Like the neighborhood that I live in, I'm not going to a school. The neighborhood that I live in is predominantly Black, so I'm going to go to school with predominantly Black kids. There's no white kids in my classroom growing up. So I think it's a little bit bigger than just the classroom about diversity and inclusion. It's about the school board and all these lines. And a lady, she went to jail because she used somebody else's address to put her kid in a better school. So it's kind of more than that,
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. So we're gonna keep pushing with the next question. How do you feel about putting it in teachers' evaluation that they have inclusion and diversity in their instruction? If they have to show that they've done this, do you think it will help? And so anybody who wants to kind of come up, respond to this, please do.
Absolutely. I think that teachers need to be held accountable, because I feel like sometimes, like, if they don't relate to it or it seems too hard, they might get lazy. We're humans. You know, sometimes you have to step out of your comfort zone. If somebody is not pushing you and telling you to do it, then it'll kind of fall by the wayside. So I think it's important that when they're doing these pop-ups in the classroom with their daily activities, but I also think it just goes back to the curriculum. You know, if they have a diverse curriculum and they're talking about all these different subjects and speaking on different people's histories and backgrounds, it'll be a lot easier for them to include everybody, because if it is a curriculum that is specifically for, you know, the majority, then they're going to be the ones that are, you know, that feel included because they see people who look like them. So I think it's important. It's just accountability, and then having those materials and making sure they have those materials. And if they don't have them, you know, giving them a consequence, because you have to hold people accountable. At the end of the day, these are adults. And if we want to change anything, you can't just suggest it. You have to put some kind of, you know, system in place where things will get done.
Absolutely. Yep, Nandi, come on.
I would say that, how do I put this? Okay, I gotta try to be not politically correct, because it's correct. I think if this is put in place, it has to be in place for all schools and all teachers. These type of evaluations are put in place for a lot of our Title I schools, a lot of predominantly any minority schools. However, these same criteria and standards aren't being put in place for our predominantly white schools. Therefore, there's a lot of educators that will stop teaching at one school just so they can be comfortable and not have to go out the box and not have to do extra things. So I definitely agree. I think it should be put in place for all teachers at all schools. That way all kids are learning about each other. And I think it would help. The biggest thing I would say is that we just need more people going to college for education. I appreciate lateral entry teachers, but we do need more people going to college and learning how to be educators. In return, the criteria or the standards for the type of teachers we pick to go into schools are very different. There's a high need for teachers. So I think having this evaluation will help, but we also just have to, you know, we have to recruit more educators.
Absolutely, absolutely. Arian, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I kind of agree, but I also kind of slightly disagree, because I feel like an evaluation is cool, but it's like, if that's already the curriculum and they're being tested, like, you know, the stuff that's in the curriculum is on the state test, like the white history that we're learning, then there wouldn't need to be an evaluation, because if the students are getting these questions right on their standardized test that they're giving, then you see what I'm trying to say? Like the last question, it's bigger than that. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to start up here. Like, we can't, like, yeah, teachers like Nandi, she's a teacher, so she can implement things into her curriculum. But if it's already there, then she wouldn't have to do that. And they would be tested on these things to make sure that they know it. So I agree, but I also disagree, because I just feel like it's a systematic thing. It's bigger than this. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's really bigger than all of us. So that's what I'll say.
Absolutely. And I think it's a part of like such a huge movement to change curriculum, to change standards, to change systemic policies that are in place that are not holding all educators to the standard of diversity, equity, inclusion, culturally responsive pedagogy, all of these sorts of things that like we know that our students need. The entire system isn't built to provide them. But we're going to keep on trucking. We're going to keep moving along, and then like educator at a time, we're going to figure it out and then dismantle the whole thing. So I want to talk about the next question. We have a sophomore secondary education major student. Would agree to truly implement an inclusive curriculum. We would need more Black people at the Board of Education positions in each county and state. Also, for a follow-up question, would you also agree state assessment testing isn't inclusive and does more harm than it does good? So I think that came up in the last question a little bit, but we'll definitely tackle the assessments piece and the piece about more Black people at the positions of the school board.
Okay, so I can answer this very quickly. We definitely need more diversity on these boards. You cannot have somebody who hasn't gone through what you're going through talking for you. You need somebody who looks like you, representing you, and somebody who just genuinely wants to see change. So it definitely needs to be diverse along the board, and not just diverse in the sense that they want to say that they're diverse, but like actually want to have change and actually have people who aren't just sitting in these seats so that it can be diverse, but people who are sitting in these seats making it diverse and also making change. And then for the follow-up question, I do think that state testing it's not inclusive, from the questions, they're not inclusive. A lot of times these Black names are not good enough for testing. And so for me, if I'm doing these like preps and I see somebody who has a name that looks like my cousin's name, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that question because my cousin has that name, making things more real. I think it really just goes back to being real, because if I see something that just really doesn't relate to me and I'm already not understanding the question, now I have to memorize it, I'm not really learning anything. And also just being diverse within the way that they test students. Tests don't always have to be sitting down in a quiet room, making sure that they bubble in the answers, because everybody doesn't learn like that. So not even talking about race, culture, ethnicity, but just talking about the way that they're getting these materials from the students to show that they learned something. I think that needs in itself needs to be more diverse, because not everybody is good at testing. And so if you want to get this information back from the students to see if they learn, then I think that needs to be more diverse.
Okay.
Good. No, go ahead.
I would say, so it's actually one of the reasons why I'm a part of the Student North Carolina Association of Educators, because I'm going to be very transparent. Going into education, I didn't know it was so political. Like, I knew why I wanted to do it, but I didn't know that it was so political. And I even learned that it's not even our teachers that decide the curriculum, it's the governor at that time. So a lot of times when you have a more conservative leading governor, in return, you'll see your students are learning more conservative materials. So I think, and I think they even piggybacks on the last thing about policy as well, is that we need to, I would just say that, like, I don't think curriculum should be truly in the hands of the state. Or it could be in the hands of the state, but it needs to be in control of from teachers, like by teachers, for us, by us kind of thing. That way you actually see curriculum and textbooks that reflect what we know our students need to learn. I definitely agree that assessment testing isn't inclusive at all. You will even see, and you just won't see Black names. You will barely see Hispanic names, and when you do, they're stereotypical names. You will barely see Asian names, and the only time you see minority names are on those reading, passages. But other than that, the questions don't reflect that. I will say that the praxis, which is the teaching exam, they actually do include inclusive questions and things that reflect. So I would say I definitely think education, the way we do assessment and testing, is going to change, because if they're testing teachers on having questions that are diverse, I think in return, sooner or later, the questions they have our students will be diverse too.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I think you guys touched on everything. I don't really have much to say. But just going back to what I said earlier, it's bigger than us. So I think that having Black people on the school board and stuff like that, it will help. But it's like Nandi said, the governor controls the curriculum, and I don't think that's fair. But
yeah, so it's we're just identifying, again, so many, like someone said in the chat, I'm hearing a lot of changes needing to be made in the systemic group and individual level. So it's like we're identifying and continuing to identify the problems that we're seeing in our system, and then we need to have spaces like this and various other spaces that are going to help us kind of dismantle and recreate those things. And so we have one more question before we close out, which I can't believe an hour has already gone by. But our last question is, what advice would you give to teacher educators? So people who are in the master's programs, in the PhD programs, that are preparing the teachers who are going to teach your students. What advice do you want to give them to improve those programs, to improve the readiness to address diverse student needs?
So I think the only advice that I would give to them is to be beyond the paper. So know that, like, just you're teaching these teachers to teach their students like materials so they can go on and take these tests and be successful, but know that like when these teachers leave your classrooms to go to their own classrooms, it won't just be, you know, the material. So I think it's important to just foster the teachers like the teachers need to foster the students. So just making sure that your curriculums and things you are teaching them is not only the information, but teaching them how to be compassionate and how to deal with different people with different backgrounds and how to step back from situations, analyze them, and come back. And so, you know, psychology and sociology and things that aren't so black and white and tangible, touching on those things so that not saying that these teachers will be counselors, but you know, when teachers do wear many different hats, you know, especially in those cities where, you know, there may not be that many teachers and they have larger classrooms. So just helping them to not spread themselves too thin, but also being very, you know, multi-talented in what they're going to do for their students.
I would say my advice to teacher educators to improve our teacher prep programs. I would say, how do I put this? So I'm just gonna use A&T as an example. Our College of Education is literally like all of our classes are geared towards teaching all students. Like they're all about diversity, they're all about inclusivity. I would like say this past semester, or even this past year being in the College of Education, all of my classes all touched on like the same basic foundations. So I think teacher prep programs need to focus on that as well. Like they need to focus on the same things that their parents and that their students reflect. I know other institutions, they might only take 1 or 2 classes about diversity in urban schools. I think we just need to increase the numbers, or if you're not going to increase the numbers, each class, even your math theory classes, your science theory, you know, your reading classes for your educators, they all need to have that basis. And that way, if they all have that basis, then it will improve their readiness to address diverse student needs.
Beautiful. Amazing.
I would say that I feel like in a college setting, you have more control, like teachers and professors have more control over what they teach their students. So I feel like this is just a perfect opportunity to like implement whatever you want to see, you know? So just taking advantage of the fact that you don't have to teach everything that whatever is telling you to teach. Like you have full control over which teach your classroom. So I agree, but I also agree with what Nadia and Ari said as well.
Thank you. And so our last question, official last question, is for Ariel. Any update when the flashcards will be back in stock?
Yes, so the flashcards, I'm doing a small restock actually tomorrow. So tonight at 12, I'll be doing a small restock, so they'll be back on the website. And then I'll be doing a larger restock on sometime next week. So at the bottom of my website, you can subscribe to my email list, and I always tell them everything before I post it. And then sometimes, like, you know, when I post something, somebody may not see it. Thank you so much for purchasing the book. But yes, I'll be doing a small restock tonight, and then next week I'll be doing a larger restock. So if you're unable to get it, I will be doing a bigger one next week. But subscribe to my emailing list because I always send them out emails before everybody else, so you know. And then I also like to throw in little special codes so you can get a little discount.
Oh, love it. Thank you so much. This was so insightful, so incredible, and it has given me the invigoration that I needed to step into the next steps as myself as an educator. And I hope that that same feeling spread across the board for everyone who came to this event. Anyone who came to this event, or anyone who signed up, or anyone that you know that signed up and did not get to see the entire event, it will be posted on YouTube in the next week or so you can check that out, and I will email it out to everybody who signed up to be a part of this event. But all in all, thank you so much. We are ending directly right on time, which is beautiful. Thank you. We're going to come off of mute really quick and give Ariel, Nandi, and Arian an incredible round of applause. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys.
Buy the book.
Thank you, ladies.
Yes, make sure you buy the book. Good night, everybody.
Bye.